Hi doctor. Hi everyone. My name is Yusman from Navanenthran and my metric number is A213531 and I will be representing group 11 to start off our topical presentation on time management. So the topic that we got for our topical presentation is how can the constant pursuit of perfection lead to difficulties in managing time effectively. So before looking at the bigger picture, I would like to actually look at the definition. What is perfectionism? So by book or in a much complex way, perfectionism is a personality trait characterized by a person striving for flawlessness and setting excessively high performance standards. Or in order to make it much understandable or in simple words, it's actually a desire of a person to do a job perfectly in order to avoid people from criticizing him or her. It doesn't necessarily just have to be a desire. It can also be an addiction of someone to make sure that every job he or her do is piled up and filed up perfectly so that the others cannot criticize him or her for the job that she did. Next, we'll be looking at the purpose of the presentation. So by looking through the presentation, the first thing that we'll be able to learn is that we'll be able to understand the relationship or how time management and perfectionism actually do relate to one another, how perfectionism can affect time management. And then we'll be looking at the harmful perfectionist behavior. By being a perfectionist, what harmful things can happen to a person. And finally, we will learn how to balance between providing a quality work and doing it in a very efficient time. Previously, we looked at the definition of what perfectionism is. Now, I'm going to explain about the characteristics of perfectionism. What characteristic does a perfectionist have? So the first characteristic is they set unrealistic high standards that is impossible or in most times it is not possible for them to achieve. And by actually setting this kind of high standards and when they are not able to achieve the high standards, it will leave them to disappointment and they will actually start pushing themselves more harder to try and achieve more of it. They will start putting more pressure on themselves. The next characteristics of perfectionism is a perfectionist, they have the fear of failing or being criticized by others. As I've said earlier in my definition, the main reason why they try to pile up and make sure everything they do is perfect is in order to not give the people the chance to criticize the work they do or to not be mocked by others. The third characteristic is they find it hard to ask help from others. Normally perfectionists, they do not prefer working in a group. In fact, they prefer working by themselves. So one of the main reasons is because they do feel that at times the work that is done by others could not really meet up the level like they usually do their work. And so instead of not being satisfied with others' work, they prefer to do it all by themselves so that they can do it according to their own convenience and how they want it to turn out to. And the final characteristics of a perfectionist is they pay extreme attention to details. Usually we, in any presentations or any assignments, we do pay attention, but we do not really give much attention on the little details because we are trying to do it more effectively. But a perfectionist, every single small detail of an assignment or a job that they have do matter. So they do pay extra attention to it, not being able to actually manage their time properly.
So now, I'll tell you how can the continuous pursuit of perfection could negatively affect our time management. So firstly, being a perfectionist could lead to burnout and exhaustion. So as far as we're concerned, striving for perfection could lead to burnout, which it drains our mental and physical health and reduces our focus. Thus, this affect our time management and productivity. So I'll give you an example of a student. A student striving for perfect grades spends excessive times on revising assignments, studying, which leads to mental exhaustion. Thus, this reduces their overall productivity. And secondly, the continuous pursuit of perfection could increase stress and anxiety. So the pressure to be perfect only adds more stress. You started losing focus, spending way too much time on tiny details, all while the bigger tasks pile up, it became more overwhelming. For example, I'll give you an example of a student. When they are doing the assignment, they tend to focus or spend more time on minor details, which leads to them not finishing it on time. And as the deadline nears, the stress builds and the overall workload become overwhelming.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera. Now I will continue explain about how can the continuous pursuit of perfection negatively affect our time management. Firstly is procrastination and delays. Perfectionism and procrastination go hand in hand that people tend to delay starting or finishing a task because they fear that the result will meet their high standard or just fear of failure. But they didn't know this behavior can ultimately lead to the rush work, missed deadlines, and also it can affect the quality of our works because we spend excessive time to just thinking over and over or just avoiding doing the task under the pretext to make it perfect. But at the end, we just wasted our valuable time that we could have been used to complete other equally important tasks or maybe other urgent tasks. Usually, someone who tend to pursue professionalism has a mindset that goes along with, if I can do it perfectly, I don't want to do it at all. Because perfectionism holds you back. When you're feeling overwhelmed and under pressure to perform at such high standard, you tend to avoid doing that things. You make excuses like, I will continue write my article after I get a better idea. You put the tasks off, but at the end, you just leave that things until the last minute or until the point when you have no choice but to do it. For example, is from a view of student like us, is a student has a important assignment that due in a week, but we keep putting it off because they feel like they won't be able to write it perfectly. But at the end, they only start to writing the paper the night before it due. It's create a unnecessary stress and of course a low quality works. Lastly is inability to prioritize. When you aim for perfection in everything, you may find it hard to prioritize tasks because perfectionists often treat all the tasks as equally important, leading to excessive time spent on less important tasks. Furthermore, focusing solely on making one of the tasks perfect can lead to the inefficient time allocation, as you may end up spending too much time to the tasks that don't move the needle as much. And of course, it neglect more important or urgent tasks. For example, is a student are overly concentrated on finishing or make it perfect a club project or assignment with the distant deadlines, making sure the details is flawless, but to the extent where they overlook more important tasks or assignment with the shorter deadlines. So that's all for me. Thank you.
So now let's understand and recognize what is perfectionism. Well, perfectionism actually is a high standard set by yourself to achieve a success. But meanwhile, the target set is difficult to achieve, so it can lead to disappointed and stressful. What is the difference between understanding the perfectionism and recognizing the perfectionism? Recognized perfectionism refers to a science that includes excessive self criticism and the fear of mistakes. So, what are some of the strategies to overcome perfectionism? The first strategy would be change your thinking patterns. So, you may replace self critical thoughts with positive judgments. For example, just tell yourself, nobody is perfect. I'm good. I'm doing well. The second strategy is change your perspective thinking. You may consider situations from another person's viewpoint to ease harsh self judgment. The third strategy comes to focus on the big picture. You have to avoid getting the important details instead of you forget the whole plan of your project. And the last strategy comes to compromise standards. It will gradually reduce high standards to a more achievable levels. So it can reduce your stress and your pressure level.
Then, for my part, I'll be presenting on missed deadlines and compromised quality. The later question is, how does striving for perfection ironically lead to poorer quality outcomes and missed deadlines? Firstly, procrastination. Perfectionists may delay starting because they are waiting for the ideal time or conditions which can lead to missed deadlines. They often believe they need everything planned out perfectly before starting, but in reality, waiting for perfection wastes valuable time that could have been used to make steady progress. Then, overworking small details. Spending excessive time on minor aspects can mean major parts of the project get rushed or overlooked, leading to an imbalanced outcome. The fixation on details often leads to incomplete or poorly done sections because there's not enough time left to address the bigger picture properly. Thirdly, difficulty on accepting feedback. Perfectionists may resist constructive feedback as they feel criticized, missing valuable insights that could improve their work. This resistance can prevent collaboration and innovation as they see suggestions as a sign of failure rather than opportunity to grow. Furthermore, inability to prioritize. Perfectionists often struggle to distinguish between crucial and minor tasks, speeding themselves to thin and compromising overall quality. This is because instead of focusing on the tasks that have the most impact, they try to make everything perfect, which can lead to waste of energy and time on less important details. Besides, reduced creativity. Perfectionism stifles risk taking, so work becomes overly safe, lacking creative and innovative solutions. Fear of failure prevents experimentation, leading to predictable results instead of fresh groundbreaking ideas. Moreover, high stress levels. The constant need to flawless creates stress, impairing clear thinking and judgment, which can negatively impact quality. This can lead to huge impact because chronic stress can also lead to mental blocks, making it harder to find efficient or effective solutions. Last but not least, fear of finishing. Perfectionists may avoid finalizing a project to keep improving it, which delays completion and risks falling short of deadlines. They may be afraid their work won't be good enough once it's done, so they delay ending it, which leaves them stuck in a never ending loop of revisions.
Hi, my name is ARDEEP, and we have listened from our fellow friends about their part. Now, what are the benefits for reducing perfectionism for time management? Well, the first benefit is actually that we can avoid burnouts. Well, burnouts occurs when we do not have any rest in our activity. For instance, let's just say I'm taking an activity of I'm studying at night, late at night, and I've never take any breaks. I never take any 15-minute breaks, or I just continue studying. And guess what? We will have burnouts, and this will actually impact on our productivity. We will have sense of reducing our productivity, and if we shift it to a more balanced time management, for example, if we take more breaks and all those, we can relax our mind, and that actually can change our way of our productivity to more efficient. And if we can relax our mind and all those, it can even provide motivation for us. But that's the first benefit. Well, the second benefit is actually that we can improve our creativity. Well, most of us actually can't deny that we are always be bounded by our perfectionism. Well, if you go to school and knows that teachers will say, okay, you must follow this font size, you must follow that size, you must follow this size. Or what happens is actually we are more to not perfectionism, we actually more to creativity. Well, it actually can improve our creativity. Well, if you see in the image what I put here is the Stairs at Night, the artist actually did not use any perfectionism. Well, the artist actually used imaginative lines and shapes that were not actually in art. Well, guess what? Look at how beautiful the art, man. So it shows that actually when we reduce perfectionism in our time management, well, we can actually be more creative. We won't be bounded by the normal standards of the task. Well, that's the second benefit. Well, the third benefit is actually that we're able to decide faster. Why do I say that? Well, perfectionists actually tend to make sure that the stuff they are doing are always zero flaws. They will make sure that they will take more time to ensure there's no any flaws. But that actually gives a negative impact that it actually consumes times. Well, what happens if we shift it to a more balanced time management? Well, we can actually save our time. And guess what? Although we do not ensure there's 0% flaws, but we can ensure there's also no flaws in there. Not much flaws. Well, let's just say, take an example. A is producing a car, there's engine with this engine, that ensuring there's no flaws in his engine. And B is also producing a car, but way less flaws in the engine. Well, when it comes to time of manufacturing and production of vehicle, B will tend to make more faster time production cars than A, and that actually give impacts to the economy. And people will start to buy B's vehicle as A will come out late in the market. Well, actually, if you see, there is positive impacts when we actually shift to a more time balance management.
So, what are the signs that someone may be struggling with perfectionism? So people with perfectionism tend to have overly high standards and self-criticism. For the first one, they have unrealistically high expectations, where they set exceptionally high goals, often unreachable, causing constant dissatisfaction. And second is that they focus on small mistakes or minor flaws. They obsess over small mistakes, which others might overlook, leading to the feelings of inadequacy. And the third one is they constant self-criticize. They regularly doubt their achievement and their abilities, feeling that they're never doing enough. Another sign for the perfectionist is that they have a fear of failure and procrastination, in which they avoid task. They are hesitant to start or finish their task due to fear they won't meet a certain perfect standard. And the second one is that they use procrastination as a defense. All right, they delay work to avoid facing the possibility of not meeting the perfect standard, and which leads them creating stress. And they also excessively redo their task or their assignment so that they spend too much time revising and also cause inefficiency and impact their productivity. So people with perfectionism also have difficulty in accepting mistakes and seeking validation. They struggle with feedbacks. They take constructive criticism personally instead of seeing it as a growth. They look at it as an insult. And they also obsess over their past mistakes. They cannot let go of their past errors, leading to ongoing worries and self-doubt about others' opinions. And lastly, they seek approval. Depends on the praise from others to feel validated. They struggle to recognize their own achievement.
to wrap up this section, let's quickly recap the key points about perfectionism and its impact on time management. We talked about how social pressures often push us towards perfectionism, making us obsess over flawless results instead of focusing on efficiency. Ironically, this mindset usually leads to more stress, missed deadlines, and in many cases, poorer quality outcomes. The big takeaway here is that perfectionism can hold us back more than it helps. By learning to prioritize progress over perfectionism, we can manage our time better and reduce unnecessary stress. Thank you, and let's move on to the next part. Now, let's talk about some practical steps to take in order for you to manage perfectionism. First, it's so important to identify what really matters. Not everything needs to be perfect. Ask yourself, does this detail actually count, or am I just overthinking it? Next, try using balanced strategy. Break tasks into smaller, doable parts and focus on making steady progress instead of chasing flawless results. And finally, practice self-compassion. Mistakes happen. They are part of learning. Instead of being too hard on yourself, think about what you can learn and move forward. So, to wrap things up, let's remember the importance of balance in everything we do. Managing our time effectively while striving for quality is key, but it's also about being realistic. Perfection isn't always possible, and that's okay. By focusing on what truly matters, applying balanced strategies, and practicing self-compassion, we can reduce stress and actually feel more satisfied with our achievement. In the end, finding this balance doesn't just make us more productive, it creates a healthier, more sustainable connection with work and time. Progress, not perfection, is what leads to the long-term success. Thank you so much for your time today.